The big question here is, have they set themselves up for a Scott Frost potential situation? What is up, everybody? It is Jake with Master Football, back at it again. Happy Wednesday. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to be up to date on all things EA college football and see plenty of college football content, subscribe to this channel right now. I also do some pro and Madden content as well. Anything related to football, just check it out right here. Please hit the red subscribe button. Okay, quest for 1K, we're almost there. All right, do all that. Like, share, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff. I really appreciate it. Without further ado, let's get into the video. All right, guys, I went over a video recently talking about all of the coaches that were fired in the Power 5. And there were a couple of them. You see Arizona State, you see Georgia Tech, you see Wisconsin, and things like that. Now, with Wisconsin, I even said it like that. Wisconsin's ones got me a little confused here. Paul Chryst, a really, really successful coach with Wisconsin, was ultimately let go the other day following a 2-3 start. I wanted to analyze this one a little bit more because I think that Wisconsin is taking a big chance by stepping into this situation here, and I'm going to break down why. We'll get into that right now. So over here from Athlon Sports, it's going to explain a little bit more of the reasoning as to why Paul Chryst was fired. Come down here and check out this. So there's a video here from WJOX 94.5 FM. Jeff Potroikis is going to break this down himself, but it comes down here and he says, last year was disappointing. They got off to a tough start. Graham Mertz was a starting quarterback this year. They were 0-2 in league, 1-3 overall. They rallied and were in position to play in the Big Ten title game, but got outplayed thoroughly by Minnesota last game of the season there. Iowa ultimately went to the Big Ten championship. This year, Chryst made changes in the offseason, gave up offensive coordinator, gave up play calling, all in an effort to get the offense up and running. This hasn't worked. The offense is stuck in neutral. The defense is struggling a little bit because they lost 8 starters. The loss to Illinois is really what shook people at UW, including AD Chris McIntosh. And you see here from channel3000.com, they say, was firing Paul Chryst the right decision? And again, right here, we have 2,429 responses, 55% yes, 45% no. So really interesting to see that percentage there, because obviously you see when a coach gets fired, most people are like, yes, he's got to go. You see the fact when, Scott Frost got fired from Nebraska, you lose to, Georgia Southern. Granted, they are, solid team out there, but you were projected to win by a lot and you did not. You go all the way over to Ireland, you lose to Northwestern, who's not exactly a great team either. And you just see the fact that these things keep on piling up. Oklahoma just blew them out. It was definitely a huge discrepancy between Oklahoma and Nebraska in that rivalry game. Now, that's a different situation from Paul Chryst here. That's actually probably closer to, Frank Solich getting fired after winning 9 games the year before. Again, ironically, Bo Pelini. It's one of those programs, and again, I'm actually going to have several parallels between Nebraska and Wisconsin here. There's another team I'll reference too, but there's several comparisons you can do between these two teams. They're both in kind of difficult to recruit areas. But they're both historically pretty successful. Actually, as a matter of fact, Wisconsin's success is much more recent than Nebraska's. Nebraska has a lot of more, historical success. But Wisconsin's really started with a guy by the name of Barry Alvarez. But thinking about that, man, it's just, you see the fact they fired Paul Chryst. Now remember, last year got off to a 1-3 start and ultimately won many games in a row to get back to a 9-win season. But this year, 2-3, not going to cut it. He's out. So that's where we're at right now. But I'm telling you right now, I'm just not 100% sure if Wisconsin understands the history of their team and where they're going to go from here. So this is the 131-year history of the Wisconsin Badgers, and you see the fact that Paul Chryst right here got off to that 2-3 start. Look at this, though. Check. I mean, they're actually a pretty successful program if you think about it. 9-4. The COVID year, they went 4-3. I kind of throw the COVID year out in a lot of instances, but then about this, but you think about this here: 10-4, 8-5, 13-1, 11-3, 10-3, 10-3, or technically 11-3, 9-4, 8-5, 11-3, 11-2, 10-3, 7-6, 7-6, not so great, 9-4, 12-1, 10-3, 9-3, 7-6, 8-6, and then we come over here to 5-7, 9-4, 10-2, 11-1. Gosh, that's crazy when you see the discrepancy between all of these records, and you come down over here and you start checking out Don Morton, 2-9, 1-10, 3-8, 3-9, 5-6, 7-4, 7-4, 7-5. Okay, Dave McClain did his job. Then we come down here, we see a little bit more 0-10, 0-9, 3-6, 3-6, 3-5, 6-3, 1-5. Gosh, I mean, it wasn't all until all the way back here, way, way back in the day, with your boy Phil King. Phil King went 7-1-1, 9-1, 9-1, 9-2, 8-1, 9-0, and then 6-3. And then they kind of entered this weird area. Charles Hutchins had a 5-0 record. Will Gino had a 7-0 record. But for the most part, the real ability or the history of Wisconsin kind of starts with Barry Alvarez. It starts with him back here in 1989. 1990, excuse me, that's where he was hired. They go 1-10, 5-6, 5-6, and then they start rattling it off. They have, what is this, Rose Bowl appearances? They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Rose Bowl appearances in the last 30 years. I'm telling you, that's the history of this program, and they're doing a pretty good job with it. And keep in mind, Barry Alvarez, let's say prior to his arrival, the Badgers had recorded only 4 in nearly 100 seasons in 1897 to 1899 and 1901. Wisconsin has regularly played a season schedule of 9 or more games from 1942 onwards. So yeah, 1942 and before, they just didn't play all that many games. But for the most part, the big history of Wisconsin is basically Barry Alvarez, who had 6 seasons with at least 9 wins at Wisconsin. Like I said, 4 in the previous almost 100 years. And Wisconsin is definitely known. And again, like I said, there's several different things out there you can distinguish between teams. You know that if you're going to coach at Miami, you're going to have speed no matter what. You walk off campus, you're going to have speed. You know, you coach at Utah. Utah's a team that recruits size really, really well. You're going to be a very, very big team. You can say the same thing here about the Wisconsin Badgers. And again, check this out. I'm telling you, you're going to find a correlation here. So we see here, these are all the players in the NFL right now. Not the previous years, just in NFL right now. You're going to see something. Okay, guard, center, running back, guard, tackle, center, guard, fullback, tackle, fullback. You can definitely tell what this team does. This team is a big physical running team. There's how many amazing running backs, Monty Ball, you think about Melvin Gordon. There's a lot, Jonathan Taylor. There's so many good running backs and offensive linemen that come from here. Joe Thomas, recently Hall of Famer. So this is what this team does. This is what this team can have. Big, corn-fed white boys out there on the offensive line. There's some black offensive linemen too, don't get me wrong. But big Wisconsin guys blowing people off the ball in the running game. So like I said, it started with Barry Alvarez really establishing the understanding of what Wisconsin football is. Big physical running game. They come right at you. He had a lot of really good success there. Now, they're trying to find the new head coach. They got rid of Paul Chryst, and they're trying to go and find somebody who is a successful coach. And again, a lot of people, I understand this. Again, Andy Avalos, my boy at Boise State, was a former head coach there, our former coach there. So they want to go find one of our own. And they found one of their own that they're interested in. His name is Lance Leipold. So Kansas Jayhawks football coach Lance Leipold has no plans to leave or open Badgers' job despite Wisconsin ties. We're happy here. So like I said, he's been asked about this a lot. He's off to a really good start with the Kansas Jayhawks, and they're asked basically, are you going to go over there? Are you going to coach? Because you have to remember, he was the coach at Wisconsin Whitewater, and he also was born really, really close to Madison. So he was born in Jefferson, Wisconsin, and what is that? That is 32 miles away from Madison. That's how close he is. That's where he was born. Now, again, he's 58. He's a little bit older, but again, that's how far he is from Madison. But I want to make sure that we're clear about something because I understand the thought process with Lance Leipold. He's a close-by guy. He's a successful coach. Bring him in. He's an offensive innovator. But I want to make sure that we're clear about this and what we need to be safe about. Ultimately, these athletic directors are going to do what they want to do. I want to make sure that we're clear about something, though. I don't think that Wisconsin is in the same realm of USC, Miami, Texas, Ohio State, Oklahoma, things like that. Meaning you walk off campus and then within a 100-mile radius, maybe not Oklahoma, but within a 100-mile radius, you can find your entire team. You can't do that at Wisconsin. There's a couple different programs out there that are very similar to each other. Nebraska, Wisconsin, and Virginia Tech. In my opinion, those programs are pretty solid programs, but at the same time, they're not quite A+ because you have to be special in some way outside of just having really, really good players in order to be successful at those areas. Wisconsin, they leaned on the running game. That's what they did. Nebraska, they leaned into their, their weightlifting program and things like that. Virginia Tech, when they had Frank Beamer, they leaned into special teams, also were able to recruit athletes like Michael Vick out of, Newport News in Virginia and things like that. But for the most part, you have to do something special at those A- programs. The A+ programs, you get the best players, you go out there and you coach and you win national championships. The A- programs, the B+, A- programs, you have to really innovate and be creative out there. So you think about what they've done. The big question here is, have they set themselves up for a Scott Frost potential situation. Remember with Nebraska, they were ultimately successful with, Bo Pelini. He got fired for some social things they got fired for, although I personally think, that some of that may be true, but they also sped up the desire to find something was sped up by the fact that they were frustrated by 9-3 seasons. So Paul Chryst was fired. They weren't ultimately successful. But remember here, we're going to go check out the coaches, and you're going to see a common pattern here because they've had pretty stable coaching for the last 30 years. So they fired Paul Chryst. They weren't happy with what he's been doing so far. But when you check out these head coaches for the last 30 years, like I said, they've been remarkably stable. So Paul Chryst was the head coach over at Pitt for a little bit, but he was offensive coordinator for Brett Bielema when he was at Wisconsin. He went over to Pitt for 2 years, for 3 years, and then came back and was hired. Gary Anderson was brought in. Gary Anderson went 10-3 and 9-4. He left after the 10-3 season for Oregon State for his family, but ultimately he said that the academic requirements to get into Wisconsin were holding back his recruiting. But remember here, 9-4, 10-3. There's no slouch there. And you can see Brett Bielema here. What is that? 11-3, 11-2, 10-3, 12-1. Really, really successful head coach. Ultimately left to be in the SEC, and also just the issues of recruiting to Wisconsin. And he also mentioned too that he wanted to get his assistants paid more money. And then Barry Alvarez coming over here, very, very successful as well. So all the way back from 1990 up until now, they've been really, really stable. Paul Chryst is the first coach to have been fired in over 30 years. So that's the great question. The great question is, are you setting yourselves up for a Scott Frost situation? You go out there, you fire your head coach, you want to go get a local guy, you bring him in, he's ultimately not successful. And not only do you take those 8-4, 9-3 seasons for granted, you also put yourself at risk for, what if Wisconsin sets himself up for a 3-9, 2-10, 4-8 season? I know it's easy to say right now because I think they've gotten used to the fact that wins have just become so easy for them because of how much consistency they've had at head coach. So they're setting themselves up for that, and I'm not the only one who's worried about that for them too. Joel Klatt gives cautious warning to Wisconsin, be careful what you wish for. I'm telling you right now, come out here and check this out. He says Nebraska comes to mind. Obviously, they've done this twice since 2000. In this century, they fired Frank Solich and Bo Pelini. You got to be careful with what you wish for. If you're Wisconsin, it's a razor's edge. So they are going to, they've named Jim Leonard the interim, and they're searching for, hopefully, Lance Leipold as the next head coach. But remember, there's no guarantees for success, but I think they're kind of taking that for granted, that wins at Wisconsin become so easy. But, man, we'll see what happens with this Wisconsin. I know who I would want to bring in as a head coach, and I've basically just been saying this. I'm like a broken record right now. I know who I want to get, especially for these A- programs, who would be a dynamite person to bring in. If you've ever watched my content before, you know I am a massive fan of Dave Clawson and the slow mesh. Imagine the slow mesh with big old Wisconsin offensive linemen. I'm telling you, and the running backs too, they would be amazing with that. Now, the cool thing about this is that he's right now currently at Wake Forest. He's mostly a Northeastern guy, Albany, Lehigh, Villanova, Fordham. For the most part, he's up in the Northeast. But that means he's not necessarily married to the Wake Forest region. You can bring him over. He's a little bit younger than Lance Leipold, only a couple of years. Super, super innovative. Like I said, if you're at one of these A- programs, you have to separate yourself in some way. I think Dave Clawson, he's a prime hire for any of those programs. Like I said, for Virginia Tech or Nebraska or for Wisconsin, he'd be great because not only is he a solid coach, but he'd give you an edge that you can't necessarily recruit 5 feet off of Madison, Wisconsin's campus. So I'm a little worried. Again, I don't know what's going to happen here, but I know that you've entered the realm of we would rather take a chance with a Scott Frost, 4-8 season than we would with continually going 8-4, 9-3, something like that. So again, you guys get in the comments right now. Let me know. Are you guys with what Wisconsin is doing? Would you have fired him? Do you honestly think they can go get Lance Leipold? Who would you suggest? Do you like Dave Clawson? Am I mentioning him too much? Get in the comments right now and let me know. All right, guys, that's it. Thank you so much for being here. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. I appreciate it. I'll see you guys later. I am out.